Do you think it's possible he might take his life?
It takes a certain individual to prepare himself to do a lot of years in jail. From the lifestyle that he had, I'm not saying that he can't. I just don't see him able to do time behind bars. Maybe if he'd be in a camp type situation, that's a possibility. But based on the lifestyle and what he's done and what he's accomplished, if he had to go behind those bars for a lot of years, I think that he may commit. He do an Epstein. And you gotta look at that interview that Jonathan Odie did, bro. He said,
the hip-hop agenda is to move drugs all over the United States. They move all the dope in private jets inside the United States, okay? They move what's called high-grade powder, and they move coke, and they move liquid cocaine in the bottles too. I've seen the liquid cocaine, I've drank it myself, having sex with Diddy and Cassie.
That was more damaging than Cassie. The DEA wasn't involved in this. It was the FBI and the Homeland Security, basically. That's because African thing. But if they find any of that stuff in any one of his houses, there's a problem. Even if they find illegal guns, if they find any kind of drug, a high amount, cocaine and weed, I don't think Diddy gonna get charged because what he did, he put everything in his kid's name and his company. They found out that Diddy was using other inmates' phone cards. Now that probably happens all the time. You understand? And he gotta be probably the smartest, dumbest person that I know, because he gotta know that those phone calls are being taped. So whatever his lawyers and them come up with, the prosecution's gonna come up with something else. So the judge is gonna wanna know, well, what did they do, you know, when they found out he was in violations of some of this stuff that he was doing. But it's gonna be something that I think it may shock the world.
Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
What happens is if people go into a trial believing the firepower on the prosecution is so strong, I mean, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 95 that it's so strong, but it goes down to an 88. That helps the defense because everybody goes in thinking, wow, they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and all of a sudden, none of it's there. I think that actually helps the defense.
She did, and when the judge did, Diddy, who was sitting at the defense table with his attorneys, did not show any signs of emotion. He took a sip of water before he was led out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. Now, his lawyers have vowed to fight this. They are going to be back in court on Wednesday before the judge who will oversee this trial and try to get Diddy to be released.
Everyone knew he was the devil. He's been the devil for 30 years. He's been covered and protected by not only Clive Davis, but Lucien Grange. He was selected to be the demon that he is, to keep the culture in line so the industry could continue to keep it for all of its precious jewels. We have too many lost. The list of lost is ridiculous, and everyone knows Diddy was selected for this job. He's the Judas.
Mr. Combs feels A, he's innocent, which is why he's not going to plead guilty. B, he's going to be truthful about this case because he wants to portray that to the people who have loved him his whole life. And I think he also feels an obligation to people in general. Maybe it's black people, maybe it's white people, maybe it's anybody who's ever felt aggrieved and targeted by the government. He feels an obligation to those people to say, you know what, maybe I can break the model. You know, maybe I can show the world that a black man can win, you know, in federal court. And I think he probably is the only person I know of who might be able to actually accomplish that.
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. Our next story takes us out to the Big Apple as Sean Diddy Combs will be back in court today for day 2 of his trafficking and racketeering trial. Jury selection is set to resume with 19 jurors from the first day's pool moving on to the next stage. Fox 5 New York's Briella Tomasetti joins us live this morning outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan with the very latest details. A lot of eyes on this case, Briella. Good morning.
Gina, good morning to you, and I can tell you this, it's expected to be another busy day at court. As a reminder, yesterday, potential jurors were given a brief explanation of the charges. The judge also told them that the defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Major developments tonight involving the case against Sean Diddy Combs, what he decided in court today, and what this now means, the move coming just 4 days before his trial is set to begin. Here's Aaron Katursky.
Tonight, Sean Combs makes it official. He's rejecting the government's offer to plead guilty and spare himself the possibility of a prolonged term in prison. When asked if he turned down the offer, Combs answered, "Yes, I do, Your Honor," as he stood in a baggy beige jail uniform. Terms were not disclosed, but prosecutors did say a plea could result in a shorter sentence for Combs than if he's convicted.
Wow, you guys, if you thought it couldn't get any worse, it actually does. Diddy's being hit with another SA lawsuit, but this time from a former male employee. And he's saying that Diddy would touch him inappropriately.
He knows the deck is stacked against him. They've got a ton of evidence. Take the plea deal, dude. Just take it.
Well, my guess is that, because we don't know the deal of the plea deal. At least I don't think we do.
True.
Okay.
One thing that really stands out that she says is that at one point Diddy had a knife inside her mouth and then says, "I'm going to give you a Glasgow smile," which is, you know, slitting someone's cheeks. But he's warned against it by a member of his team, saying Diddy's associates would prefer it if she, referring to Ashley, looked normal. She also says that they said to her they could ship her off and sell her to anyone in the world and she'd never be seen again by her parents or loved ones. Now, Ashley did make a police report in 2018 at the time of the alleged incident, and the Contra Costa Sheriff's Department confirmed her report was thoroughly investigated and it was determined the claims were unfounded. Diddy's team said Mr. Combs was nowhere near Orinda, California on the day that she claimed she was assaulted. There's no evidence that Mr. Combs was ever even in the same room as the alleged victim. She's completely unbelievable and no sane person who views the evidence will credit her story.
We have the latest from federal court in the Sean Combs criminal case. Status of jury selection, what Diddy's going to be wearing, violation of a gag order, rejecting a plea offer.
Diddy's lawyers had argued that he had made good faith efforts by showing up in New York, ready to surrender to face these charges, but prosecutors said that he could not be trusted, that he has a history of trying to intimidate witnesses, including some who are going to be witnesses in this case. They urged the judge to remand him.
What made you come here to support Puff?
I'm supporting Puff because he's innocent, and I'm wholeheartedly believing his innocence, and I know he's innocent. So
you say you know he's innocent?
1,000%.
The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now. That will test whether one of music's most prolific figures used his power, wealth, and fame to exploit both women and men for decades.
Panda is a secret code for a certain thing, and so when it comes down to that certain thing, what it is you basically have a certain nerve in your rectum, and if you touch that nerve, you can turn a person into an animal, you can turn a person into whatever you want them to be if you just hold them down.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs back behind bars, a magistrate judge denying him bail, saying that there were no conditions that she could conceive of that would make her confident that he would appear again for other court appearances. The judge saying, "My concern is this is a crime that happens behind closed doors."
At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes. As his lawyers argue, the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way.
This is going to be such a massive trial, like maybe the biggest Hollywood trial. God knows which way it's going to go. Is it going to go on for weeks?
For sure, weeks.
Do you still think that, because there is this public perception, that there are celebrity tapes involved in this case?
No.
Do you still think that there are minors involved in this case?
I'm certain no.
Okay.
And again, when you say this case, we're talking the criminal case.
The criminal case.
In the
correct.
criminal,
I know that.
In the criminal case, no.
Elaborate, sometimes days-long parties by coercing victims through drugs, threats, and manipulation. They claim to have video evidence, and some of the accusations echo details from over 70 civil lawsuits filed against Combs over the last 30 years.
Would you be open to a plea bargain?
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent, and what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
Back up a little bit, please.
How can you support your father? How do you support him moving forward?
We made love. We made love.
Who you made love with?
Diddy, Bow Wow, Busta Rhymes.
Isn't that, to my mind, that's one of the bigger hurdles in selecting a jury this coming week, is that there is, at least anecdotally, you know, when I talk to people, they have that opinion, strongly held opinion, that there's celebrity tapes, that they've kind of conflated Epstein, and you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell and all of these things into Diddy. There's this idea that somehow this is Epstein redux or something.
Telling you that, yes, TD Jakes is Kim Porter. So you tell me what they was doing. I'm not going to express how I feel about that because I don't.
The last hearing before Sean Combs' trial starts, when he walked into federal court today, he appeared to be looking for his family. They've pretty much been at all of the hearings that I've been to, but there was no presence of his sons or his mother or his sister who had previously been at those hearings.
Now, as far as jury selection goes, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that both sides expect to have all of this done in the matter of 3 days. Now, given just how high profile this trial is, I was kind of stunned that they seem very confident that they will be able to seat a jury in that amount of time.
Imagine this. One of the most powerful men in music, a self-made billionaire who not only shaped but defined an entire era of hip-hop, now sits behind bars, staring down the barrel of a potential decades-long prison sentence. This is a man who once stood at the pinnacle of success, owning private jets, throwing lavish parties, and commanding the respect of millions. Yet today, he finds himself stripped of freedom, isolated within cold, concrete walls. But here's the twist that makes this story even more gripping. His fate might rest entirely in the hands of a single jailhouse informant. Yes, you heard that right. A man who once ruled boardrooms and red carpets could see his legacy crumble because of whispered conversations allegedly overheard in the confines of a detention center. Welcome to the trial that has the potential to redefine how we view fame, power, and justice in America. Today, we're diving deep into the explosive case against Sean Diddy Combs, a story so layered with controversy and intrigue that it feels almost too wild to be true. Accusations of trafficking, racketeering, coercion, and decades of alleged exploitation paint a grim picture of what prosecutors describe as a calculated abuse of wealth and influence. From secret recordings allegedly capturing incriminating conversations to surveillance footage showing interactions between Diddy and the cooperating inmate, every piece of evidence adds another layer of complexity to this already staggering narrative. And then there's the jailhouse twist. An inmate who claims to have logged detailed notes on late-night phone calls and hush strategizing, all while working in the facility's laundry detail. If his testimony holds up under scrutiny, it could shift the entire trajectory of the trial. This isn't just a courtroom drama. It's a saga straight out of Hollywood, complete with larger-than-life characters, shocking revelations, and high-stakes consequences. Except, unlike a movie script, this is real life, and its outcome will ripple far beyond the walls of the courthouse. Let's break it down step by step, starting with the foundation of this explosive case. Diddy, a man who once stood at the pinnacle of music and culture, now finds himself staring down a gauntlet of federal charges that include human trafficking, racketeering, sexual assault, and even allegations eerily reminiscent of Jeffrey Epstein's operations. According to prosecutors, he allegedly leveraged his immense wealth, fame, and influence to coerce victims through an insidious combination of drugs, threats, and psychological manipulation, all while orchestrating extravagant parties across the country. These gatherings weren't just about opulence. They were allegedly designed to create an environment where power dynamics could be exploited, leaving victims vulnerable and voiceless. But what makes this case so utterly jaw-dropping isn't merely the criminal indictment itself. It's the sheer volume of accusations that have piled up against him over the span of 3 decades. Believe it or not, there are over 70 civil lawsuits filed against Diddy during this time, many of which contain eerily similar allegations. The details paint a chilling picture. Claims of non-consensual acts, intimidation tactics, and silencing agreements cleverly disguised as consulting fees or other seemingly legitimate payments. It's not just about one man anymore. This case has become a lens through which we can examine how systems of power may have been manipulated to protect someone like Diddy for years, allowing these alleged abuses to continue unchecked. And if you thought things couldn't possibly get worse for him, buckle up, because they absolutely do. Just days before his trial was set to begin, Diddy made headlines again, this time for rejecting a plea deal that would have significantly reduced his potential prison sentence. His legal team insists that all encounters in question involved consenting adults and argue that the relationships were misconstrued. But here's the million-dollar question. Will a jury buy that defense? With mounting evidence, witness testimonies, and public scrutiny breathing down his neck, Diddy's decision to take his chances in court feels like a high-stakes gamble, one that could either vindicate him or seal his fate forever. This case isn't just about guilt or innocence. It's about unraveling layers of privilege, power, and secrecy that have long defined the entertainment industry. And as the world watches, every move Diddy makes, and every piece of evidence presented, could reshape how we view fame, accountability, and justice itself. Here's where the story takes on a deeply personal dimension. When questioned about his decision to reject the plea deal, Diddy reportedly responded with a simple yet bold statement: "I'm innocent." This wasn't just a denial of the charges, it was a declaration of defiance. Diddy isn't just planning to fight the legal battle in court, he's positioning himself as more than a defendant. In his mind, this trial isn't solely about him. He sees himself as a symbol, someone standing up not only for his own name, but for anyone who has ever felt targeted or wrongfully accused by the justice system. His attorney has doubled down on this narrative, emphasizing that Diddy feels a profound sense of obligation, not just to himself, but to a broader community. Whether it's Black people, white people, or anyone who has faced what they perceive as an unfair legal process, Diddy apparently views this case as an opportunity to challenge the status quo. Is this a strategic attempt to sway public opinion and paint himself as a martyr? Or is he genuinely convinced that he can dismantle a system that many believe is skewed against high-profile defendants like him? The truth likely lies somewhere in between. What we do know is that turning down a plea deal carries significant risks. It suggests either immense confidence in his legal team or an unshakable belief in his ability to persuade a jury of his innocence. Either way, this decision underscores one undeniable reality. Diddy is all in, ready to take his chances in front of a jury. And let me tell you, winning over a jury in a federal courtroom won't be easy. With prosecutors armed to the teeth with evidence and a cooperating witness prepared to testify, Diddy's path to acquittal is fraught with challenges. Yet, his refusal to back down raises the stakes even higher. Will his gamble pay off, or will it lead to his downfall? Only time will tell. This move has sparked intense debate among legal experts and fans alike. Some see arrogance in Diddy's stance, interpreting it as a billionaire's hubris, a refusal to accept responsibility when the odds are stacked against him. Others view it as courage, a rare moment of defiance in the face of overwhelming power. Regardless of how you interpret it, one thing is certain. Diddy's decision to go to trial has transformed this case into something far bigger than just a legal proceeding. It's now a referendum on justice, celebrity, and the very notion of fairness in America. And as the trial unfolds, the world will be watching closely to see whether Diddy's bold gamble will rewrite the rules or seal his fate. Now, let's delve deeper into the voices on the other side, the accusers. These are the individuals who have come forward with allegations that paint a chilling picture of coercion, fear, and manipulation at the hands of Diddy. One woman recounts a harrowing incident where she claims Diddy threatened her with a Glasgow smile, a violent act involving slicing the corners of someone's mouth to leave a permanent, grotesque grin. According to her account, he allegedly said, "I'll give you something to really scream about," in a tone that left her terrified and powerless. Another accuser describes being subjected to inappropriate touching during private encounters, claiming that she felt trapped and unable to resist due to his overwhelming influence and control. Yet another individual alleges that Diddy's associates made sinister threats, warning her that she'd never see her family again if she didn't comply with their demands. These accusations aren't just isolated incidents. They form a pattern of behavior that prosecutors argue spans decades. However, as is often the case in high-stakes legal battles, there's another side to the story. Diddy's legal team has launched a fierce counteroffensive, vehemently denying all allegations and portraying the accusers as unreliable or even opportunistic. They've pointed out inconsistencies in the accusers' narratives, raising doubts about the credibility of their claims. For instance, take Ashley, one of the women at the center of this storm. She filed a police report back in 2018, alleging misconduct by Diddy. However, investigators at the time reviewed her case and ultimately deemed her claims unfounded. Diddy's lawyers have seized on this, arguing that there's no concrete evidence placing him anywhere near the alleged scenes of these incidents. In fact, they've gone so far as to call the accusers unbelievable, suggesting that their motives might be driven by financial gain, revenge, or media attention rather than a genuine pursuit of justice. The courtroom has become a battleground of competing truths. On one side, you have accusers sharing deeply personal and disturbing stories, painting Diddy as a manipulative figure who exploited his wealth and power. On the other side, his defense team is working tirelessly to dismantle those narratives, questioning every detail, motive, and piece of evidence. The stakes couldn't be higher. If the prosecution can convince the jury that these accounts are credible and supported by corroborating evidence, it could spell disaster for Diddy. But if the defense succeeds in casting doubt on the accuser's stories, it could shift the entire trajectory of the trial. So, the question remains, who's telling the truth? Is it the accusers, who claim they're finally breaking their silence after years of fear and intimidation? Or is it Diddy, who insists he's innocent and being unfairly targeted? That's a decision the jury will ultimately have to make, and one that could redefine not only Diddy's legacy, but also how we view power, accountability, and justice in the entertainment industry. This is where the story takes an even darker and more complex turn. Deep within the reinforced walls of Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, whispers have begun to surface. Whispers that could reshape the entire trajectory of the case against Sean Diddy Combs. At the heart of these rumors is one inmate, known only as Witness X, a man whose cooperation with prosecutors has become the prosecution's potential ace in the hole. Described as a native of Queens, Witness X reportedly worked in the facility's laundry detail, a role that granted him access to corridors where high-profile detainees like Diddy occasionally passed through. It's a position that, on the surface, seems mundane, but in the context of this case, it has proven to be anything but. According to sealed court filings, Witness X didn't just passively observe. He meticulously documented everything. Armed with a spiral notebook, he logged detailed observations, jotting down comments, late-night phone calls, and fragments of conversations he claims to have overheard through the vents or during brief encounters. Prosecutors allege that among these notes are references to Diddy strategizing behind the scenes, discussing ways to mitigate fallout, allegedly instructing a relative to clean out a storage unit in Jersey before federal raids hit his properties. These claims didn't fall on deaf ears. Federal agents moved swiftly, securing search warrants for a storage facility in Newark linked to a shell corporation tied to Diddy's vast financial network. What they found was striking: 8 sealed boxes, a laptop, and several hard drives. Among the items seized were flash drives labeled Event Roster 2013 and Charity Gala Guest List. Digital forensic specialists are now sifting through the data, searching for connections between names on those lists and payments prosecutors describe as consulting fees, masking hush agreements. The prosecution believes witness X's account, when combined with other evidence like surveillance footage, paints a damning picture. That same footage allegedly shows Diddy and witness X sharing breakfast at adjoining tables on multiple mornings, a detail defense attorneys dismiss as speculative theater. Prosecutors argue these interactions were informal strategy huddles, while Diddy's legal team insists they were nothing more than routine proximity in a shared space. Still, the footage ensures the jury will see the two men in close quarters, a visual that could undercut the defense's claims of pure fabrication. But here's the twist. Diddy's defense isn't holding back. They've labeled witness X's testimony as nothing more than a jailhouse fabrication, arguing that his cooperation is driven by self-interest rather than truth. Court documents reveal that witness X is facing a decade-long sentence for cocaine distribution charges, and his decision to cooperate came just 48 hours after prosecutors offered him a tentative plea deal in his unrelated case. Defense attorneys plan to highlight this timing, framing witness X as a desperate man willing to craft elaborate stories for a chance at freedom. They've also pointed to disciplinary write-ups showing he once hoarded contraband coffee packets, attempting to paint him as unreliable and opportunistic. Yet, prosecutors remain unfazed, hinting that they have significant independent corroboration to back up witness X's claims. Phone logs show multiple calls from Diddy to a number traced to a longtime associate who manages real estate ventures tied to his portfolio. Analysts believe these calls could demonstrate consciousness of guilt if they reveal property transfers or sudden asset shielding. The defense counters that the calls reflect routine business, but insiders note that the timestamps align closely with entries in witness X's notebook, a detail likely to surface during cross-examination. As the trial looms, the tension surrounding witness X's testimony grows palpable. Will jurors see him as a credible insider shedding light on hidden truths, or as a calculating opportunist seeking leniency? His background adds another layer of complexity. Born in Queens, witness X reportedly worked construction jobs between stints in county lockups before his federal case sealed his fate. Prosecutors plan to emphasize his street-level background, positioning him as someone outside the glitz and glamour of Diddy's world, thus bolstering claims of authenticity. Conversely, the defense depicts him as a career hustler who once impersonated a fire inspector to steal copper wire, a portrait far removed from that of a civic-minded truth-teller. The stakes couldn't be higher. Witness X's words could either crystallize the prosecution's narrative of organized wrongdoing or crumble under the weight of scrutiny. For Diddy, the outcome hinges not just on the strength of the evidence, but on the credibility of the man delivering it. As both sides prepare for a fierce battle over motive, memory, and truth, one thing is certain. The answer to whether witness X's account stands unshaken may very well determine the fate of one of music's most iconic figures. As the trial unfolds, the ripple effects are already being felt across Diddy's vast empire. Sponsors who once clamored to attach their brands to his name are now distancing themselves at lightning speed. Streaming numbers for his classic albums have dipped, a modest but symbolic slide that underscores shifting public sentiment. Financial analysts tracking his assets note accelerated divestitures, including a Beverly Hills property sold at a sharp discount just weeks after witness X began cooperating. Bank regulators, already reviewing suspicious activity reports flagged by compliance teams, question whether proceeds from these sales are being funneled into offshore trusts or hidden accounts. Defense representatives insist these transactions were pre-negotiated and unrelated to the case, but prosecutors may frame them as evidence of anticipatory asset flight, a move designed to shield wealth ahead of potential forfeiture orders. Meanwhile, key stakeholders like tour promoters and vodka brand partners grow uneasy. Insurance underwriters monitoring Keyman clauses tied to Diddy's freedom and public standing warn that a conviction could trigger cross-default provisions in financing agreements, potentially collapsing parts of his business network. Public relations strategists on both sides understand the high-stakes game they're playing. By centering the narrative around an opportunistic jailhouse informant, Diddy's team hopes to paint the prosecution as desperate. Conversely, Government attorneys argue that first-hand testimony supported by data trails and seized documents can illuminate a decade-long pattern of clandestine operations. Each camp is rehearsing simplified labels, truth versus fabrication, for opening statements, knowing whichever phrase sticks could sway undecided jurors long before witness X even takes the stand. Outside the courtroom, the media storm rages on. 2 cable networks have devoted primetime specials to the jailhouse twist, replaying archival footage of Diddy's rise from Uptown Records in turn to global entrepreneur over somber narration about criminal exposure. Hashtags proclaiming loyalty battle with advocacy groups applauding the possibility of new transparency. Industry veterans recall similar drills when scandals gripped other entertainment giants, but note that the velocity of social media in 2025 compresses reaction time to hours, not days. For Diddy's inner circle, silence is no longer a safe default. It reads as tacit admission in the court of public opinion. Crisis management firms instruct high-profile clients to prepare contingency statements if witness X introduces new names, balancing denial with empathy for alleged victims. Booking agents whisper about postponed festival slots, while radio programmers quietly reduce spins of Diddy-produced classics, wary of backlash campaigns. Yet past precedent shows fan loyalty can rebound if he beats the charges. Executives shuffle revenue forecasts based on acquittal versus conviction variables, toggling between optimism and caution. The psychological dimensions of jailhouse cooperation add another layer to this complex saga. Experts say prolonged confinement can magnify self-interest and fear, nudging inmates toward deals that offer hope of daylight. Witness X, facing a decade behind bars, may view his testimony as a pragmatic step rather than a moral crusade. Prosecutors will likely address this directly during direct examination, framing the deal as lawful leverage, serving the greater good. Defense lawyers, however, plan to paint him as a desperate man willing to craft fairy tales for freedom. Technology will also take center stage. The government's evidence list references digital forensics extractions from encrypted messaging apps once popular among celebrity security teams. Investigators used a gray market exploit to recover fragments of group chat logs, several of which align with dates witness X claims Diddy discussed managing fallout. Defense filings seek to exclude these chats as incomplete hearsay, arguing contextual gaps erase probative value. The judge has ordered an evidentiary hearing to decide which excerpts play in open court, a proceeding likely to draw overflow crowds and minute-by-minute commentary online. Meanwhile, reform advocates view the situation through a broader lens. They argue that high-profile cooperation deals spotlight disparities. An informant can barter freedom with sensational claims while low-visibility defendants languish. Prosecutors counter that complex enterprises are notoriously insulated, and insider voices remain indispensable for dismantling coordinated wrongdoing. This philosophical debate may simmer in law review articles, but for 12 jurors, the decision will hinge on tangible credibility metrics: demeanor, detail, corroboration. As jury selection begins, biases unique to celebrity cases come into focus. Prosecutors expect defense counsel to target jurors who grew up on 90s hip-hop, banking on nostalgia to seed reasonable doubt. The government, conversely, seeks panelists with military or accounting backgrounds, believing structure and numbers trump stardom. Voir dire questionnaires already include references to parasocial relationships with public figures, an acknowledgement that modern fandom blurs lines between admiration and objectivity. One lingering question overshadows procedural minutiae. Will witness X's testimony stand unshaken once defense attorneys zero in on inconsistencies? Cross-examiners will likely highlight minor chronological slips discovered in interview transcripts. Whether a hallway conversation occurred before breakfast or after lights out, such discrepancies, mundane in isolation, can erode confidence if layered skillfully. Prosecutors, anticipating the barrage, have prepped witness X with weeks of mock sessions, drilling the phrase, "to the best of my recollection," as a buffer against absolute certainty traps. Still, the human element persists. Staring down a federal courtroom packed with reporters is light years away from scribbling notes on a bunk. Witness X must relay memories unmarred by confusion or embellishment, while defense lawyers hunt for cracks. One ill-timed stumble could shift the entire burden back onto forensics and paper trails, reducing the cellmate's bombshell to background noise. Conversely, a composed, coherent narrative confirmed by metadata and financial ledgers could crystallize a compelling through line for jurors grappling with abstract corporate structures. Will one man's testimony be enough to bring down a titan? Or is this just another chapter in a long history of power, secrets, and survival in the spotlight? As the courthouse clock ticks closer to trial, the world waits to see whether witness X's words will tilt the scales or crumble under scrutiny. For Diddy, this isn't just about legal jeopardy. It's about preserving a cultural legacy built over 3 decades. But regardless of the verdict, one thing is certain. The glitz and glamour carefully curated for years may never shine quite the same again.